My own sister thought she could crush me in front of everyone. She called me a nobody, laughed at my dreams, and believed I'd stay silent. But the sound of rotor blades changed everything when my helicopter descended. Her cruel words vanished in the thunder of my comeback. I could feel the weight of late summer air as I stepped onto the gravel driveway of my father's lakeside home. The scent of pine and charcoal from the grill mixed with the low hum of chatter spilling from the back patio. Dad's retirement party was supposed to be about him, about celebrating decades of work and quiet sacrifice. But in the back of my mind, I already knew Marielle would find a way to bend the evening toward herself, and maybe toward me, if she spotted the chance. That's how it had always been with us, her voice louder, her presence sharper, her need to win every room unshakable. I kept my pace measured, almost deliberate, my heels crunching softly with each step. I had chosen a simple navy dress and a cardigan, nothing flashy, nothing that hinted at the storm I carried inside. To everyone here, I was still the younger sister who chased art projects and half-finished dreams, the one who'd moved out of state to find herself. And I let them think that. It gave me space to breathe, to build, to plan without their constant commentary. When I reached the patio, I saw her immediately. Marielle stood near the string lights like she owned the glow. Her hair caught the last orange streaks of sunset, and her laugh, sharp as ever, cut through the gentle buzz of conversation. She spotted me and gave a smile that looked friendly to everyone else but landed like a blade on me. "Look who decided to show up," she said, just loud enough for the circle around her to hear. A few guests turned to glance at me, polite smiles masking their curiosity. I forced a small grin, the kind that says I'm not here to play, and hugged Dad tightly. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I felt safe. But even as we exchanged a few quiet words, I sensed Marielle's gaze, heavy and assessing. I told myself to stay calm, to remember why I'd come, to honor Dad, to celebrate, to stay quiet if I could. But a part of me, silent for years, stirred awake. Something in the evening air hinted that silence wouldn't last. Growing up with Marielle meant living in a constant shadow that stretched longer than any summer day. She was 3 years older, born with that flawless blend of confidence and calculation that made adults adore her and kids follow her lead. I remember school mornings when she'd stride into the kitchen with her hair perfectly brushed and her backpack zipped while I was still searching for my other shoe. Mom would sigh at me, Dad would chuckle at her perfection, and the unspoken verdict settled in the air: Marielle was the reliable one, I was the dreamer who might someday figure it out. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me, they did, but they trusted Marielle's path more. She checked every box: honors student, college scholarships, a career in corporate marketing before 25. I, on the other hand, collected sketchbooks and late-night ideas like loose coins. I took community art classes, worked part-time at a bookstore, and spoke often about projects I never finished. To them, it probably looked like I was floating without a map. Marielle noticed every stumble and turned it into casual commentary. "Still painting those murals? Must be nice to have so much free time." She'd toss those words with a grin, as if she were teasing, but I felt the sting each time. At first I let it roll off, telling myself she couldn't help it. But when she started pointing out my tiny income in front of relatives, something inside me hardened. 2 years ago, I quietly co-founded a tech art startup with a friend from college. We built immersive installations that blended light, sound, and motion, and before long we were signing contracts with big galleries. I stopped sharing updates with family, partly for privacy, partly for the satisfaction of keeping something precious away from Marielle's constant measuring. So when Dad announced his retirement party, I RSVP'd without revealing how far I'd come. I wanted to celebrate him, not me. Still, a small voice whispered that this might be the night everything shifted. I didn't come seeking a showdown, but I was no longer the sister who needed her approval. I had built something real, and tonight, silence was my shield. Dinner began under a canopy of warm string lights, the lake reflecting every shimmer like it wanted to eavesdrop. Plates of roasted salmon and garden vegetables passed around the long wooden table, and laughter rippled as neighbors toasted my father's years of steady work. I relaxed a little, believing maybe, just maybe, Marielle would behave. But as the last toast to Dad faded, Marielle's chair scraped against the deck with that purposeful screech I knew too well. She rose, champagne flute in hand, the crowd quieting out of instinct. Before we wrap up, she said brightly, "I'd love to share a few words about family." Her smile stretched wide, but I recognized the spark in her eyes, the same spark that preceded every childhood ambush. "I want to celebrate my amazing father," she began, offering Dad a gracious nod. "He's the reason we all know the value of hard work and discipline." She let the pause linger just a second too long before turning her gaze toward me. "Some of us," her head tilted, voice sweet as syrup, "are still figuring that out." A polite chuckle drifted through the guests, unsure whether to laugh. I felt heat creep up my neck, my fork frozen above the plate. Marielle went on, the words like pinpricks dressed as compliments. "It takes courage to follow dreams that don't pay the bills. Aubrey's always been brave that way." Another pause, a glint of mischief. "Though I hear the old Honda is still running?" Classic Aubrey, loyal to a fault, even with cars. A ripple of awkward laughter followed. I caught the quick glances around the table, the tight smiles from neighbors unsure how to react. Dad cleared his throat, ready to intervene, but she pressed on. "Maybe one day we'll all buy a ticket to her first big gallery show. When it happens." My chest tightened. Every word landed like a carefully wrapped insult, each one daring me to react. But I stayed still, nails biting into my palm beneath the table. I could hear my heartbeat over the soft music. Marielle raised her glass high. "To Dad, and to dreams that might someday come true." The clink of crystal felt like a challenge. The moment her toast ended, an uneasy quiet settled over the table. I could feel every set of eyes dart between us, the polite smiles of guests stretched thin like paper ready to tear. Marielle basked in the attention, swirling her champagne as if she'd just delivered a masterpiece. I took a sip of water, hoping the coolness might steady the heat burning in my chest. But she wasn't done. "You know," she said suddenly, leaning forward so her bracelets clinked, "Dad always taught us to be independent. To stand on our own. Some of us," again that too bright smile, "have taken a little longer to get there." A couple of nervous laughs escaped from the far end of the table. My father shifted in his seat, jaw tight, but he stayed silent. The neighbors looked down at their plates, pretending to study the rosemary sprigs on the roasted potatoes. Marielle's voice carried like a bell. "I mean, it must be nice to have so much freedom. No 9-to-5 grind, no deadlines. Just art. And a trusty old Honda to keep you humble." Her tone was sugar, but the blade beneath it gleamed. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. Years of swallowing small jabs flashed through me, every family dinner where she recited her promotions. Every holiday where she compared my hobbies to her career. I had promised myself I wouldn't ruin Dad's night. But the silence around me now felt like permission. Still, I held back. Instead, I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. That seemed to bother her more than if I'd snapped. Her smile tightened. "Well," she added with a mock sigh, "at least you always show up with a story. Maybe that's worth something." The table shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. The string lights above us flickered in a breeze, their glow trembling like my patience. Inside, a decision solidified. I wasn't the timid sister she remembered. I wouldn't let her rewrite me with a single cruel speech. The humiliation she aimed to pin on me had already begun to twist, slowly, silently, into something else. Something she wouldn't see coming until the air itself roared. The tension hung heavy enough to taste, like metal on my tongue. I pushed my chair back with slow precision, the wooden legs scraping softly against the deck. Conversations faltered. Even the lake seemed to hush. Marielle's eyes followed me, gleaming with that smug satisfaction of someone who believes she's already won. I placed my napkin neatly beside my plate, a small act of control amid the chaos inside me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm, too calm. No tremor, no bite. Just steady. Dad glanced up, concern etched across his brow, but I gave him a slight smile that said, "Trust me." Every step away from the table felt like peeling off an old skin. The air outside the stringlit patio was cooler, scented with pine and distant rain. I moved through the garden path, gravel crunching under my heels, the sound grounding me in the moment. Behind me, the murmurs resumed, soft ripples of curiosity. I knew Marielle would be spinning some remark about my dramatic exit, but I didn't care. The truth was, I wasn't running from humiliation, I was walking toward a plan that had been months in the making. In the quiet of my pocket, my phone buzzed, a single text from my business partner confirming what we'd arranged earlier that day. The timing was perfect. I paused at the edge of the lawn, breathing in the dusk. The horizon blushed with the last traces of sunset, and the lake mirrored the fading light like molten glass. My heart steadied, not from surrender but from anticipation. For years, I'd stayed silent while Marielle painted me as the family's whimsical failure. Tonight, silence was no longer weakness. It was strategy. I wasn't about to shout across a dinner table or trade insults. I had something far louder waiting, something that didn't need words to prove my worth. I turned my face toward the distant thrum I'd been expecting, faint but distinct. The sound of blades slicing air. My quiet exit wasn't an escape. It was the prelude to a roar that would drown every cruel syllable she'd ever spoken. At first it was only a low vibration underfoot, a tremor that mingled with the evening breeze. Then came the rhythmic thump of rotor blades, faint but growing, a sound that didn't belong to the stillness of the lake. I looked up to see guests rising from their seats, hands shielding eyes as they scanned the dusky sky. Conversations halted, wine glasses froze midair. The noise swelled, unmistakable now. A sleek black helicopter sliced through the fading light, its polished body catching the last streaks of sunset. The garden lights flickered against the downwash as it circled once, then descended toward the wide stretch of lawn beyond the patio. Gasps scattered through the crowd. Someone muttered, "Is that for real?" Chairs scraped as people hurried toward the edge of the deck, drawn like iron to a magnet. I stayed where I was, a few paces from the garden path, the wind from the blades tossing my hair across my face. The helicopter settled with a final, triumphant roar. The pilot stepped out first, helmet under his arm, scanning until his gaze found mine. With an easy nod, he approached and offered a leather-bound portfolio embossed with the logo of my company. "Ms. Lane," he said clearly over the fading thrum, "the signed partnership documents you requested." Every eye turned to me. The hush was immediate and electric. I accepted the folder, the weight of it grounding me as I finally stepped forward. For a heartbeat, I simply stood there, the wind from the rotors whipping my dress, the smell of fuel and pine mingling in the cool air. Then I looked toward the patio, directly at Marielle. Her expression shifted from confusion to a stunned blankness that words could never capture. I raised my voice just enough to carry. "Thank you," I said to the pilot, then to the crowd, for waiting while I wrapped up a little business. No explanation. No bragging. Just fact. The helicopter's presence spoke louder than anything I could have planned. The roar of its blades wasn't just sound, it was the echo of years of quiet work, finally landing for everyone to see. The air still vibrated with the helicopter's fading roar as I stepped toward the patio, leather portfolio in hand. The crowd parted instinctively, their eyes wide, their murmurs a low tide of disbelief. Marielle stood rooted near the center of it all, her confident posture collapsing inch by inch as I approached. I stopped a few feet away, the evening wind still tugging at my hair. "Dad," I said first, letting my voice carry, "I wanted tonight to be about you. You've always shown me that real strength is quiet and steady. This," I lifted the portfolio slightly, "is just a small piece of what you taught me." His eyes softened, pride shining like a beacon. The guests leaned in, sensing something bigger than the spectacle. Then I turned to Marielle. Her face was pale, lips pressed tight. I held her gaze, calm and unwavering. "You've always liked to tell my story for me," I said, my tone even, "but tonight, I think I'll tell it myself." A hush fell so deep I could hear the lake lapping against the shore. I opened the folder and displayed the signed partnership contract, the proof of a multi-million-dollar deal, my company's name bold across the header. Gasps rippled through the group like a sudden breeze. Marielle's mouth opened, but before she could shape a word, the helicopter engine revved for departure. The renewed roar swallowed her voice completely, rotor wash sending her hair and scarf whipping across her face. It was as if the sky itself refused to let her speak. I held her gaze, my own steady. "Never mistake quiet for weakness," I said, each word clear despite the thunder overhead. The guests broke into spontaneous applause, some cheering over the pounding blades. Dad reached for me, his hug firm and warm, pride radiating through every heartbeat. As the helicopter lifted, its wind carried away the last fragments of Marielle's composure. The sound drowned not just her words, but years of her carefully stacked judgments. In that deafening, liberating moment, the balance between us shifted forever, no argument, no insult, only the undeniable proof of who I had become. As the helicopter disappeared into the twilight, the lawn slowly returned to its natural quiet, though the air still tingled with leftover electricity. Guests lingered in small clusters, voices hushed and awed, like they'd just witnessed something far larger than a simple family party. I felt the weight of the moment settle around me, light, almost buoyant, like stepping into a life I'd been quietly building for years. Dad was the first to move. He wrapped me in a hug so strong I nearly lost my breath. "I knew you were working hard," he murmured against my hair, "but this is extraordinary." His words anchored me, and for the first time that evening, the tightness in my chest eased. When he stepped back, I caught Marielle's eyes. She stood a few feet away, her arms crossed as if to shield herself from the echo of the rotors. The sharpness that usually lived on her face was gone, replaced by something unreadable, part shock, part reflection. For a heartbeat, I saw not the rival sister but the girl I used to share secrets with under blanket forts. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. "Marielle," I said quietly, "I never wanted to compete with you." My voice carried enough for her alone. I just wanted to be myself. Her lips parted like she might speak, but no words came. Instead, she gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't an apology, not yet, but it wasn't defiance either. Neighbors approached with congratulations, their warmth genuine, their eyes bright with surprise. I smiled, shook hands, accepted hugs, all while a deep calm settled inside me. The years of being underestimated had forged a resilience that no flashy reveal could fully explain. Later, as the crowd thinned and stars began to pierce the sky, I walked along the lake's edge. The water reflected the night, smooth and endless. I thought about karma, how it doesn't always crash down with fury. Sometimes it arrives like a quiet storm, lifting you above the noise until the truth is impossible to ignore. In that stillness, I knew I hadn't humiliated anyone. I had simply arrived, on my own terms, at last. Standing there under a sky full of quiet stars, I finally understood what true victory feels like. It isn't loud or showy. It doesn't demand applause. It's a calm strength that settles in your chest when you've stayed true to yourself despite every doubt thrown your way. For years, I let Marielle's words shape how others saw me, and sometimes how I saw myself. I convinced myself that silence meant weakness, that her voice defined the narrative. But tonight proved something I wish I'd known long ago: silence can be power. It can be focus, patience, and preparation all braided together until the right moment arrives. The helicopter wasn't just a grand entrance. It was a symbol of every late night I spent working while she dismissed my ambitions. Every careful choice I made to build something solid while keeping my dreams private. I didn't need to humiliate her to make my point. Karma simply aligned with the truth I'd been living all along. I glanced back toward the house where the last lights flickered and heard a soft breeze ripple across the lake. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to compete. I felt free. Marielle might need time to understand what happened tonight, and that's her path to walk. I hope she finds her own quiet strength, just as I found mine. If you've ever been underestimated, by family, by friends, by anyone who thought your silence meant you had nothing to show, remember this: your worth isn't measured by their words. It's built in the hours no one sees, in the choices you make when no one's watching. So hold steady. Build in your own time. Let them talk. And when your moment arrives, you won't need to shout. The truth will speak louder than any voice trying to drown it. Before you go, if this story reminded you that quiet persistence wins in the end, give this video a like, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more tales where karma lands right on time, sometimes with the roar of 1,000 blades, and sometimes with the hush of a single breath.